Everybody hear me all right? Okay, I hear a little bit of a ring, but we'll be fine, I'm sure. So yeah, KX, is the first slide ready? Can you pop that up there? Here's the thing. KX, yes, we're a lot like, David and I are good mates, and we are really passionate about seeing the church multiply through ordinary people. And so one of the things 2 years ago when I became the director, I was like, we got to stop only serving senior leaders because they're not the church. We're all the church. And so we want to be a network that actually doesn't just support your senior leaders, but also supports you. And so here's a couple QR codes. One is on the left is a WhatsApp group. It's kind of our WhatsApp community. And periodically there's blog posts there or different conversations that take place or invitations to, we call something a convo every month. For over a lunch period, we actually have somebody give a 10-minute talk on a theological issue or a missional issue that's related to those of us that are more everyday people working in the marketplace or teachers or whatnot. And then we have a 40-minute discussion. And we are creating those for the everyday person. And so those can be, if you join our WhatsApp group, you'll get all the announcements on that. On the right is a blog that I kind of host. And I try to, that's my passion, is to write for everyday people. Because I'm going to tell you a little bit of our story. So we, as you can tell, I didn't grow up here. I did confuse a few people last night at the campfire, wondering if they didn't really catch the American accent. I think now, I think you can pretty clearly tell I'm from America. But I didn't plan to be in ministry. I didn't plan to be a missionary. We came over here 15 years ago as missionaries. And before that, I was a pastor. I'd never planned to be a pastor. In fact, the first time somebody asked me, would you consider applying for it, it was an executive pastor position, which doesn't really exist over here. But basically, the churches are so big, they sometimes need pastors to run the church. And that was my job initially. When they said, would you be interested in applying for this pastorate position, I'm like, I'm not a pastor. I don't have the training. I'm not ordained. I had all the excuses. And in fact, I remember I went to a Christian university. I remember being in probably a theology class, and it was the only class, or one of the only classes I ever fell asleep in. Like I pretty much disqualified myself from the very beginning of my adult life. But God had different plans, and I ended up in university getting really excited about people and actually helping people live better. And it was my early days of really understanding my faith, of what it meant to follow Jesus. I think I'm still trying to figure that out and learning that, if I'm honest, as you are too. But there was this, I started to get really interested in coming alongside people and what we now call discipleship. And so then I started to pursue, even though my undergrad was in business, I started to pursue some work in higher education. So in the U.S., we have these large universities that are primarily Christian, and so there's a Christian ethos and a focus on disciple making. And so my second job outside of university was I went and moved into a dormitory full of 150 young men. And my job was basically to oversee them and to make disciples out of them. What a great job, right? And I just basically got to be a university student for another 10 years. And it kind of shows still. I'm still recovering from the food I ate for 10 years in the university and so forth. But from there, I actually, the first when I met Christy in Chicago where this was. And my wife, Christy, we've been married 25 years in a couple months. And I'll tell you a little bit about her in a second. But when I met her, I was living in a dormitory with 150 men. And so when we got married, she moved in. And it was the best thing that happened to my world, because I didn't have to deal with discipline much anymore because they were afraid of Christy. And they behaved themselves all of a sudden. So I think teaming up, men and women together, we all need mothers and fathers in the church. I've believed that for a long time. And Christy and I, we then moved down to this inner city of Chicago, worked for Moody Bible Institute for a while. And this whole time we were attending mega churches. Christy had grown up in the Southern Baptist, and moved to a small Baptist church in Pennsylvania before I met her. I was attending a church of 25,000. I have a little bit of a story of that in the talk here. And then when we met, Christy couldn't handle 25,000, so we met in the middle and went to a church of 10,000. I thought that was a compromise on my part. But those are some really good years. And our kids were all born in Chicago. And so we have, just to give you a picture of my family, so Christy and I have been married 25 years. My daughter, Misty, is living in Sydney. She attended Hillsong College, got a degree in theology, works out there. I'm not sure when we're going to get her back, if ever. She loves Australia. And she's dating a guy in Singapore, and so she might end up moving to Singapore. My son is currently actually at the hospital right now with his wife because they're about to give birth. She's been induced a few hours ago. I am literally probably checking my phone as soon as I finish this. And so our first grandchild's coming into the world, and they live west of Chicago. And then I have one more daughter. She's 17. She's just finished her first year of A-levels, and I like to tell her she's the brightest one of all of them, but don't tell the other two. She is studying psychology, ethics, and literature. So she does a lot of essay work. Some of you might know what that's like at the A-level education. So that's my family. We moved here 15 years ago. So I was an executive pastor. Our church grew to about 1,000 people, which was relatively small for a mega church. But what we found is something really interesting, is we found that the church had gotten so big that we weren't really making disciples. I was actually working as one of the pastors of this church 60 hours a week, primarily in the building with Christians. I knew one non-believing couple. They were my neighbors, and I knew them because we shared a driveway. And so I kind of had to know them. And I didn't like it. And I just felt like something was off. I'd gone there, and I'd gone there to kind of help create some programs and small group ministry, but I didn't like what we were experiencing. And we found the only people we were actually making disciples of were the people that were part of our small group, that did life with us. And part of that was because of some trauma that happened with one of the ladies in our group who went to prison for a year. And as a community, we had to come alongside that family for a year and help this now single father of 5 kids with little kids. How does he work and care for these 5 kids? And we became family. And you'll understand why I'm sharing that a little later. But then Christy and I kind of got, that was a small bit of something. We were just like, yeah, this isn't really what we wanted. There's something more. And kind of miraculously, we were praying one day, and we said, God, we'll go anywhere. And again, remember, no plans to be missionaries. We'll go anywhere. Like, send us where you want us to go, but we want to make disciples. And we want to see the church multiply like it's meant to multiply. And we said amen, and my phone text went off, and it said, would you guys ever consider moving to England? And we're like, shoot, I wish we would have gotten the text a little while ago, because I wouldn't have had the prayer just preceding that saying, we'll go anywhere. But we obviously said, yes, we're here. We've lived here 15 years, and we moved here very humbly to plant a church. Again, something I had never done, something I had no training in, but that's what God tends to do. He tends to use what we're willing to give. And so we've been doing that for 15 years. It's probably been the 15 hardest years of my life. And there's been a lot of transformation in my own life, character-wise. But we're feeling like what we've done in those 15 years, God is using and has used and will be using in the future. But part of that story is we came and planted the church called Journey Community. It's very similar to this kind of a church. We're not Anglican, but we are kind of a network church. In early days, we actually shifted about 5 years ago to become a network of micro churches. It's very similar in the sense that you guys are a network church and you have church expressions kind of going out, right? Well, the only difference is the edge is where the authority lies. So all the churches are autonomous. They're all autonomous churches, and the center just serves the edges. And so we call those micro churches. We have 5 micro churches now in Bicester, all serving in various communities and in various groups of network people. And over those years, Christy and I, we started a cafe called Filter Coffee. We sold it a few months ago, and that's still being fruitful. And there's a church around that space. Currently, though, and just to get you up to speed where we're at now, is we live in a neighborhood. We've lived there 5 years, and when my son was about to take his GCSEs, we found out he was failing. And I don't know if any of you guys have been there, but that's really hard for me because not only was Christy and I both very good at school, but we went on for our master's degrees. Christy's thinking about her doctorate, and is this our son? How is he failing? And we found out a lot of it was just the social acclimation, the lad culture, and the school he was at, if I'm honest, had a very toxic culture. And so we were in this new neighborhood, and we were like, man, we got to do something for Aiden. You know, we're going to home educate him. And so we decided to start a basketball club. Really, it was for Aiden. But we did have a heart. We saw a real need amongst young people. There's this culture out there that puts them down, criticizes them, and actually many of them only rise to the identity they're given or spoken over them, right? And we're like, we got to do something better. Now, we might not be able to reach the whole town, but we love basketball. Christy was a coach in the U.S. I played basketball. And it's an up-and-coming sport, by the way, if you don't know. It's one of the fastest-growing sports in the UK right now. And we were like, there's a new school across the street, brand new, athletic fitness center, so we started this club with the idea that we want to help young men have healthy bodies, healthy minds, and healthy spirits. And we've been doing that for 5 years, and it's been up and down, and we've usually had anywhere up to probably 30 to 50 young men and old men like me involved, and some women here and there. But recently it's been primarily young men between the ages of 17 to 25. And many of them are unchurched, and very diverse. At some points we have 5 different continents playing basketball at the same time, represented on the court. And it's been a joy to have that space. But around that space, then we have a church and that church is kind of what I want to talk about this morning, because what I've learned, like early days, I set up a small group ministry, helped grow a small group ministry. Yes, we talk about the one another's and family. It's also important. And I don't think I really understood how important spiritual family is to the work. In the day and age we live in, we always talk more and more about mission. We got to be out and do mission. We got to witness. We got to do this. But what the problem I'm seeing is we can witness, we can be on mission, we can have the greatest missional vision around. But if we don't have a spiritual family to sustain us and to invite those we're coming alongside and witnessing to back into, I'm not sure we can sustain the very mission God's calling us to. And so that's part of the brave step that I want to explore this morning with you guys. Just a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit more about our church as we get later on because it kind of fits there. But the theme is being brave. Christy and I, as you probably can already tell, are very passionate, and this is kind of the phrase from one of our website, of becoming everyday disciples or helping others become everyday disciples who bravely move beyond comfortable community into creating little pockets of heaven where Jesus becomes tangible to others. And we get that little pockets of heaven from the Bible Project. They do a video about that. I love the idea of us, the purpose that we have to create little pockets of heaven so people can actually encounter Jesus. Isn't that a good picture? I've only been here 15 years. But because I live near Oxford, I get to have a lot of conversations with a number of my friends who are atheists. And sometimes I get to talk to them about the story they've heard about Christianity. I don't know about you guys, but I think, and I feel bad about this for many of you, because this wasn't my story growing up in the U.S., but I think you were told the wrong story. You were not totally wrong. Don't hear me out. I think you were told what the word they use is truncated story, a narrow story. It actually missed out the best bits. And actually, I think it impedes us and actually has an impact on us being brave, because the story we now have to tell is not a very good news story. Like, I'm a really bad person and a sinner, and if I accept Jesus, I'll go to heaven. most of my friends, first of all, their image of heaven is not something they want to go to. And no, they're not even sure they're sinners. And they are. But the story is so much bigger than that. That's where we're going to go in a second. So, I'm just kind of laying all this out, a little bit of my emotion, kind of how I'm thinking, what I'm learning, and hopefully this morning we'll land the plane someplace. But the phrase I want to kind of lay the foundation for today and tomorrow is, who we are drives what we do. And I'm not talking about individuals here. The next 2 days, let's really, every time you hear a word that makes you think of you, I want you to think of us. So who we are will drive what we do. It's very important we know who we are so we know what to do. Is there somebody, so last night, what was the who we are? What was the identity that Cy and Carrie, those of you that were here, somebody shouted that. What was the identity that we had? Sent. We were missionaries, sent missionaries, right? So you see how that works. We're sent missionaries. That's who we are. And it drives our activity, doesn't it? Many of you came up and kind of articulated the activity or what God was calling you to do because of who you are. And that's so important we get that right. Because a lot of times there's a lot of wasted activity because we just do a lot of things, but we're not doing it based upon who we are. A fun example, I'm going to give you guys a chance to take the mick out of me because I know how much people love to do that to Americans. I'm an American. That's who I am. That's part of who I am. So what is that? What would you say, me as an American, what am I known for to do? What do Americans do? Here's your opportunity. What? Guns. Yeah, we love our guns. That's right. Speaking strange accents. Drive what? Yeah, we drive way too much. Yeah. Big plates, yeah. Massive portions of food. It doesn't matter where you go out to eat. Yes. Big everything, that's right. Big everything. Yeah, I usually gain about 10 pounds every time I go to the U.S. This year, a couple weeks from now, I'm going for the third time. So I am having to work hard to stay slim. What else? A couple more. And this is your opportunity to... Sorry? Ford F-150s. Yeah, again, big trucks. You don't see many of those. And in fact, when I moved here 15 years ago, that was a really odd thing. I've never seen such small cars. And now they're all getting bigger because I live near Bicester Village, and there's a lot of wealthy foreigners that are coming in that are bringing these massive vehicles that are completely useless. But anyways. Okay, so I'm also a British citizen. 5 years ago, I raised my hand or something. I remember doing it during COVID and gave my allegiance to the Queen. I said, I'm going to be a part of this country. I'm going to be taxed like the rest of you, and we're going to commit to making this a better place to live. What should I, as a British citizen, what advice can you give me about how I should act now? Stop trying to understand the Start trying to understand the English language. Yes, that's good. What else? Talk about the weather. Yes. It's on my first page of my phone, the app. Yeah, the weather's very important. Learn to queue everywhere. You know, that's a really good one because I lived in Chicago, and if you've ever been to Chicago, they don't queue. They are constantly looking to jump the line. Oh, it's horrible. And I found myself kind of really, in my head, kind of a real battle going on. Do I go? I can get ahead of there, but I should stay. And after 15 years, I'm learning to stay in the queue, so you'd be proud of me. One or two more things? Sarcasm, yes. I actually have grown in that, and actually my American friends, sometimes I have to be really careful because they don't understand the sarcasm.
Proper football.
Beans on toast. Yeah, I do like, I never had an English breakfast before this, and now I love it. And proper football, right. Yes, I call American football now. And yeah, it's great. So that's who we are drives what we do, right? It's just kind of the way it works. Our identity, how we think about ourselves, how God thinks about us, it directs our activity and what we do. So as we explore being brave disciples and communities, before we ask what brave things should we do, we need to first ask who we are together, according to Jesus and because of Jesus. And so I want to take you all the way back to Genesis 1 briefly. And we're not going to read anything from Genesis 1, but we start back in Genesis 1 because in the beginning, God created humanity in his image. The word is imago Dei, in his image. And that phrase has been debated by theologians for centuries. But at its simplest, it means this: humans were made to make the invisible God visible. Sit with that for a second. We were made to make the invisible God visible. We were created to reflect something of who God is into the world he made. And you do see that in the idea of the mandate in the garden when we're sent out to, what were we, does anybody remember the two things we were told by God to do? Well, that's later, that's Jesus, yep. What we were, in Genesis, two things we were meant to do. We were reproduce and take care of the land, right? We were meant, and that image is really to extend the glory of God around the world. So the garden, can you believe this, wasn't actually, I don't believe the garden was the whole earth. It was a part of property on the earth. And we were meant to expand that with God by our side. Habakkuk 2:14 says, "The earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of God as the waters cover the sea." That's what we were made for, to carry the glory, the visible presence, the character, the love of God into every corner of creation. But there's a problem, right? Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fallen short of that glory. We're meant to carry the glory, we fall short of that glory. And that's usually read as a statement about guilt, and it is, but there's something else in it. Falling short of the glory. We have failed to do the thing we were made for. We were created to make the invisible God visible, and we stopped. We turned inward. We reflected ourselves rather than God. The image got distorted. And if you look at the next slide, you can see the result. We were created to be confident, and now we deal with timidity. We were created to be bold, but we can be quite cautious. We were created to be unified, but we blame and we isolate ourselves. And we know the solution is Jesus. And this is what's beautiful in Colossians. One of the letters Paul wrote to this church, in chapter 1, verse 15, it says, Jesus is the image of the invisible God. So what humanity was made to be and failed to be, Jesus is. He is the glory of the God made visible. He is what Imago Dei looks like when it's working. And then in verse 27, and this I think this is one of the greatest verses. It's one of my favorite verses. Christ in you, the hope of glory. And it kind of right back on itself. We started with the glory, extending it across the world. We lost it, and now Jesus lives in us to restore the glory. Not just Christ among us, he's in us. The same visible presence of God that walked around Galilee, now living in us. Christ in you, the image of the invisible God. It's a huge claim. Christ in us restores what sin dismantled. Christ in us restores the weight and the purpose of being human. Our life has eternal significance, not because of what we achieve, but because of whose image we bear and whose presence we carry. I just want you to think about that for a second. Our life has eternal significance, not because of what we achieve, but because of whose image we bear and whose presence we carry. Which means the question for us here, for any church really, is not primarily what should we do to be brave. We first must ask, who are we? And so over the rest of today and tomorrow, I want to talk about two images that come out of the Imago Dei, of who we are. Both of these identities are identities that have been restored by Jesus. The first image is spiritual family. Christ in you, being plural, Christ in us, isn't primarily a private restoration. It's a shared one. It's a family that's been restored. And a family living the way it was meant to live is exactly how the glory gets carried. You catch that? So Christ in us restores us as a family, and it's how the very image of the invisible God gets carried into the world. I think you guys get that, right? That's who we are. Jesus, just to give you a little scriptural foundation to this, Jesus redefines family around obedience, not blood. And you guys remember this in Mark and a couple of the other Gospels. Whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother. That's the founding moment. He reordered the biological family in favor of a family held together by shared obedience. And then Paul, this was his favorite analogy, family. Romans 8:14-17. You have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father. We're fellow heirs with Christ. This is not who we are. It's not earned, not chosen by us. It's given by the Spirit. And then we see this identity driven in action in Philemon. Another letter Paul wrote to one of his friends. He literally asked Philemon to receive Onesimus back, no longer as a slave, but as a beloved brother. And that's what family does. Who they are drives what they do. Your family. Onesimus is now part of your family. Receive him back as family. And church is, but for many decades, I think we've shifted or drifted a bit in thinking seeing church as an organization, or as a program, or as an activity. It's not. It's a family. This is who you are. And if we're spiritual family, that should have implications on what we do. So this is where it gets I'm going to get a little bit more, I'm going to try to go a little deeper. One of the words in prayer this morning was depth. And I feel one of the things, maybe it's a prophetic thing that I sense as I've lived here for 15 years and I'm part of this church in the UK, is we all get everything I just said. But that identity is not translating into activity fully. And if it doesn't happen, I tell people all the time, I love what's going on with the Quiet Revival. Especially young men. I'm super passionate about that, seeing these young men coming and finding Christ and starting to live for him. But if we don't get what I'm about to say right, it could stall everything outside of obviously the work of the Spirit. He can do whatever he wants. But I think there's something we need to act on as it relates to who we are as spiritual family. I was, as I mentioned, I was part of a big church in Chicago, Willow Creek Community Church. I know at least one person here has been to Willow. It's a little bit of let's just say it's quite an event to show up to church and there's 25,000 people that weekend on a regular basis. My time at Willow Creek, I became a participating member, they called us. And I was quite involved. From the day I got there, I knew one of the pastor's sons, so I got kind of thrust into leadership and activity quite quickly. I would attend on, many people don't know this, they just know about Willow Creek being massive and that it's highly evangelistic. And so it often would get a lot of criticism, but actually was a pretty significant Bible teaching church, if I'm honest. On Thursday nights, every Thursday night we would go, and there would be about 5,000 of us that would go on a Thursday night and be taught the Bible. And then sometimes on Saturday night, sometimes on Sunday, I would go again, and there would be more teaching, but it would be a little bit more seeker-friendly, because that was kind of what they were known for. And then there would be other activities, because I was part of the single adult ministry, that I would go and more activity. And we would do more teaching. And we would spend time together. And the interesting thing, I don't know if you guys caught this, a few years ago, a study came out. Willow Creek did an assessment of ministry and discipleship at their church. And they were quite saddened by what they found out. This is what they found out. Their research found that the most committed attenders were their least spiritually formed. All this emphasis on attending, being a part of this, hearing this, listening to this, it didn't really spiritually form the people that they were trying to lead the way they had hoped. And looking back, I could say, now I want to give them a little bit. I was in the middle of all that, and actually, I don't know if I think I probably was a little bit of an anomaly, because I was quite interested and quite motivated, so I was spiritually formed. But there was an aspect where I wasn't. I was formed in my Bible knowledge, but in my emotional health and the way I can actually learn to transform being part of a community, that wasn't formed well in me. And this is Willow Creek, one of the biggest churches that so many churches around the world were trying to imitate at the time. And being family, what we learned isn't attendance, it's proximity. Being known closely enough to be corrected. Are we putting ourselves in those kind of places? It's really a brave step, if I'm honest. I mean, it's so much easier to go and do some of the mission we do. It's much more difficult to put yourself in a family and allow yourself to be open and possibly be corrected and not maybe have the best mental health and still show up. That's hard, right? Here's a thought. We're more changed by who we love and who loves us than what we believe or the activity we participate in. Do you know that? I really believe that. We're more changed by who we love and who loves us than what we believe or the activity we participate in. It's not that those things aren't important. Don't hear me saying what I'm not saying. It's not that what we believe isn't important or the activity we participate isn't. But in place of the other, it's actually, we're not going to get what we want. We're more changed by who we love and who loves us. That's where transformation happens. Not getting more information, but being family. And this is what our friends and neighbors, and this is, again, I think one of my gifts is evangelist. I'm an apostolic evangelist, and this is this is what our friends and neighbors need. They need to see and experience a family to be able to experience the invisible God, or actually to see the invisible God become visible to them. So I want to go through 4 things real quick as we close, and then I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an assessment kind of quiz to maybe, hey, how are you doing, family? So I asked my family, my spiritual family, and you guys, let me be really honest. I have not arrived. This is still a little bit of a journey I'm on. It was only a couple years ago I burnt out trying to overachieve. I didn't have good friendship. I woke up one day and realized I was extremely lonely, had nobody in my life that really knew me, and I was just trying to achieve, and that was my identity, and it just about killed me. And coming from that, it was a bit of a wake-up call to say, there's more here, Jeff, that you need to look at. But my family, I asked them, what makes us brave? And they don't always respond, but this time they actually, about 10 of them responded and sent what they thought made us as a community brave. Or what were the brave steps they had to take to truly be part of this community? Because they've all made a little bit of that decision. We're going to be, okay, yeah, we want to be part of this, Jeff. Okay, we'll be a part of this. And it took some bravery on their part. 4 categories or postures emerged. You can turn to the next slide. The first one was really seen. They had to be brave enough to be seen. some of them said, we do church in a way that makes it difficult to hide or be anonymous. And the way we do church is, well, we're in our lives throughout the week. We do have a Sunday, you might call it a Sunday gathering, but really it's about a Sunday brunch around a table where we have kids running around and families are there, and we spend time in God's Word. We might sing. We definitely eat. We talk about highs, lows, and buffaloes. If you can steal that if you want to use that for your community. A buffalo basically is, you guys know what a high-low is, and then a buffalo would be a surprise of the week, because it would be kind of surprising if a buffalo walked through the back door right now. So high, low, buffalo. It's a way that we allow ourselves to do the one another's, how we serve each other, love each other. But you can't remain anonymous if you're coming to our brunch every week. We're like digging into your lives. What's been hard this week? And what's been your most dominant emotion? How have you worked through that? And what do you need? And we're in each other's lives, and we're known. And even one young lady, she's had a lot of mental health challenges, and there's been a lot of weeks where she says, I'm just not in the best mental health space to come. But recently she started coming, even if she's not in the best mental, because when she does come, we're so happy you're here. You can be here. It's safe to be here. And she's realizing that actually it's really important that I'm seen. And because when she's seen in the Christian community, in a spiritual family, you're loved. And I got to be honest, there's a lot of young men and women out there that need to be seen, but they need to know it's safe to be seen. So being seen is quite important. The second thing, needy. We need to be needy. Who wants to be needy? I don't want to be needy. I am like an American. That's going back to that identity. We innovated the self-made man. Well, maybe we didn't. We just think we did because we're Americans. But being vulnerable enough to ask for help. Not understanding certain aspects of the Bible and having a place where you can go ask questions and seek answers. Not just, I don't want to seem needy, or that takes real humility. And it's very countercultural because we don't want to be a burden to anybody. I was asking some of my friends, we had a barbecue recently, some of my friends who aren't part of church, don't have faith, and I just said, hey, I want to ask you guys a question. What do you think is the greatest need in our community? And what do you think you could do about it? And I was surprised. One of my friends said, well, actually, I think one of the greatest needs is that we don't have people that are available when we need help. And I was so encouraged by that. He's been journeying with us, playing basketball with us for about 5 years, so I think he's starting to get it. But he's not yet come to faith. He's not even close, actually, at least from my perspective. Maybe that's different from God's. But he gets that idea of, he's starting to realize the importance of actually being part of something instead of trying to be self-sufficient. The third one, brave enough to open our lives. So open. Being willing to let people come into your homes. From the very beginning when we moved here, we probably read it in a book. It wasn't our idea, but we talked about having refrigerator rights. Anybody ever heard of that phrase, refrigerator rights? It's the idea that, you come into a home, and actually anybody that comes into your home can go to the fridge and open it and take out whatever they want. And that is actually completely acceptable. That takes a lot of, there's an openness, a vulnerability about that. Inviting people into your homes when we typically want to give this impression of who we are by our homes. Our home's our castle. We like our privacy. But to be really part of a family, you got to kind of let go of privacy. And you've got to, we have friends that have a dog, and all of a sudden they both got to work the same day, and we're like, yeah, sure, you can send your dog over. We'll watch it for the day. Attempting, another one, my wife said this, she said, don't forget to say this, but we have brunch in our homes, and we've been hosting it for 5 years, and now Christy and I are gone a lot more, probably because a grandchild's coming, and so we're saying, hey, some of you others need to start stepping up and hosting us. And we've finally gotten to that place. But But when you host 20 or so people in your home, and there's about 8 kids, and you have no idea if something's, something could get broke, who knows what's going to happen. And then just the chaos that ensues when you have that many kids running around in your home, that takes a lot of bravery in some sense. There's an openness that we have to have. Not many people are willing to do that. And then lastly, and this kind of goes along with last night, we need to be brave enough to go. That's what these are my friends said. We've had to be brave enough to go where we're sent. We had to be brave enough to show up in places and invest relationally with not yet believers to give them a glimpse of what Jesus is like. My friend Jay has been he's been really brave. I asked him early days, I said, I want to have some spiritual conversations with some of our friends in the pub. Will you ask some people and go with me? And he did. And he got rejected. I got rejected, and then but I had 2 people say yes to us. And for over a year, we've been meeting with those guys and just having spiritual conversations. But he was brave enough to go and be a part of that. And it took a lot of bravery. Having another one of my family said, having a go at meeting a need in the neighborhood. So looking at the needs around us and saying, are we attentive to the needs around us? That's an area of bravery that it takes for us to be a part of this community. So go to the last image I wanted to show. The reason it takes bravery is because of the center aisle, what it costs. So this is what it's going to cost you to be brave. If we're going to be brave to be seen, it's going to cost us our image management. We can no longer manage our image. There's going to be days when I'm emotionally not in a great place, but my family is still welcome to come over, and I'm going to engage, and I may even tell them it's what's going on, and it's hard. There's going to be days if I want to be brave to be needy, I'm going to have to let go of my independence. If I want to be brave to be open, I'm going to have to give up my privacy and some of my time. There is a significant cost. If I want to be brave to be sent, I am willing to give up my comfort. And I would just say this, if we're not, this is what family is. And I think before mission, before witness, we must lay this foundation. This is the first step of bravery that any church that wants to be known for its witness and its mission has to establish. And we have to be able to count this cost. So I want to do something real quick here. Next slide. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes. I want to give you guys a little bit of an assessment. I'll read through them real quick, but and then I'm going to give you like 5 minutes, just quiet. First of all, am I known? And I want you guys to think, well, let me give the context. I want you guys to think of maybe you're part of a family already, or you're part of a missional community, or you're part of a small group, or maybe it's your family. Ask Jesus, okay, what context am I looking to be a part of? And maybe you're part of nothing, so you just need to, okay, I'm part of this church. Is this really my posture, is the question. So am I known or just present? When things are genuinely hard for me, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, do the people in my community actually know it? Or do I manage what they see? And then kind of a 1 would be I carefully curate what people see. A 5 would be people see the real, unfiltered me. Does that make sense? Question 2, do I ask or do I cope alone? When I have a genuine need, is my first instinct to ask my community or to quietly handle it by myself? So I default to coping alone, or 1 to 5. Where do you rank there? Number 3, do I make room or keep my distance? Do the people in my community have access to my actual life, even on a bad day, my home, my week, my mess? Or do we mostly meet on neutral ground? We keep church and life separate. 5, my home and time are genuinely open. And then lastly, am I reaching out or staying inside? And this might be a little bit of a repeat of last night, but in the last month, have I had a go at showing up for, meeting a need of, or investing in a neighbor or not yet believer, even imperfectly? Rate yourself 1 to 5. 1, my community stays inward facing, or 5, I'm regularly having a go beyond our walls. So have a go, 5 minutes, and then we'll close things down. All right. I'll let you guys, we're going to get going here in a second, but just so you guys know, at the end, there is prayer spaces over here and in the back. Make yourself available to those things. Thanks for listening. I'd actually invite you to do something. This is something that I'm just starting to work in, and I'm probably going to be going on this journey with my community. But I actually have a strong conviction that if we begin to live out our identity as spiritual family, that'll be the first step. We're so good at being missional. I mean, what I heard last night, you guys are like on it. Like, I'm super excited for all that you guys, how you see yourself as missionaries sent to the places where you're going. And I just think if we need to create those spaces, we need to be churches that actually embody this. We need to have those spaces because the people that I interact with anyways need this kind of community, and they're not finding it anywhere else. And the church can step into that gap, and in the process, they're going to then find out that actually it's the reason we act this way is because we have a restored image of Jesus, and we've been restored to this glory spreading around the world that we've been given from the very beginning to be responsible for. So, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I am completely on board with everything you said. I think probably there are two things. One is if your household isn't necessarily
Yeah.
all Christian. And the second one is the level of safeguarding that has had to
Yep.
be put in place. And, from my understanding, having a house full of 20 people, love that concept.
Yep.
How is that managed when you're potentially even inviting people who don't belong to your church and you don't know their background and you've got kids running around?
Yeah. Well, I think the first question was what again?
First one is a non-complete.
Yeah. So that does bring more challenges. That's why I think we even more so we need spiritual family. We have a number of single people, well, married people, but single in the faith in our church, and yeah, there is challenges there, but they are part of our family, and they're able to engage. We have, and I think that's just a reality we got to keep navigating with them. But the second one, I think it is very important, and that's why I think you guys are perfectly positioned to help with that, because I know for us, Journey Communities is a charity structure, so we don't do anything alone. So we have a core team, for example. So we might say, yeah, Jeff and Christy, we're hosting all these people in our house, but we have, I think, 4 more adults that are part of our core team that are also very well aware of the risk assessment. They're very well aware of all the health and safety things. They know the rules that actually when kids are in the other room, or if there's a new person there, that how we protect our kids, there's certain things that we allow and don't allow and so forth. So if we actually do take the kids out for an activity that they're not always with us, we don't do that very often, but we always make sure there's at least 2 adults that are DBS checked actually, and we can do that all through our charity. And so you guys are perfectly positioned to do that. I know there's a little less regulation over if you're just hosting people in your house and it's not a formal thing, but I actually personally I just then personally take the responsibility as the person that is the leader of that household. But we do need to be very thoughtful about that, so I'm glad you brought that up. Does that help?
Yeah.
There's solutions to everything. But we try not to make it the main thing.
So basically, we can't all fulfill all of those things. If, for example, we can't have an open house because that would be the rest of the family would find that hard.
They might, yeah. There might be some of those moments, yeah.
Sometimes you're just not going to be able to press into some of those sports.
Yeah, it might just be more creative. So do people in my community have access, instead of open my house, do they have access to my life?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just might look a little differently. We may not be able to give access to our house because of where we live or who we live with. But do they have access to my life, to me? Yeah. And then, especially the one that's really, really we're dealing a lot with is we have a lot of young people that deal with a lot of what they call mental health issues. And so a lot of times the excuses I hear nowadays are, oh, I'm just not in a good mental health place. And I'm trying to say, it's okay. That's, and maybe we need to use that language ourselves, that when they actually do come and they are part of us to admit that we're not in a great place, and then they start to see, that's part of that, creating that family. We have to be so vulnerable and so honest, those of us that are more mature with those that are younger, so they begin to see that this is what a family actually is. We don't have to hide. We can actually be a part of this, and there's something of life that comes. And that's some of the things that, this is just a simple tool. And in fact, if there's other words or better questions, like, yeah, please let me know, because I'm sure we can make this a lot better. Maybe you can help. But this is really what I want to put some energy into, is how do we make our families more accessible, more vulnerable, more honest, more life-transforming? Because everything that we're learning about neuroscience right now is where people's lives get transformed are in a context of a healthy, safe community. I think the church they should have healthy, safe communities. In fact, we should be the best at that. And if that's where people get transformed, we should be going after this with everything we have. Amen?